So I grew up in West Hartford, Connecticut. I went to school in North Carolina and lived in DC for a couple of years, and now I live in Vermont, so kind of the whole eastern seaboard. Living in Vermont is incredible. I have so much, of the things I need right at my back door, mountains, lake. For the most part, I've loved medical school. I find it really stimulating compared to my undergrad experience. Like, I actually enjoy what I'm learning, and I feel like I'm challenged every day. My brain is working really hard, and that's a very satisfying feeling. It definitely was very isolating at first. I felt like I had come to this place where the only thing we cared about was like our next step and what we were doing for ourselves, and that was kind of the antithesis of what I wanted in practicing medicine. We talk about the hidden curriculum of medical school, but I think the perfectionism is not even addressed and is very, very potent. I think you come into this world having just achieved this huge accomplishment, which is get accepted to medical school. And you think you're like, oh yeah, like I've made it. And then you get here and you realize you haven't made it at all. You made it to the starting line. And I think that just kind of ate away at me. Like, it wasn't like enough that I was showing up. It wasn't enough that I was thinking about these things. Like, you have to also look the part, realizing that there's a lot of pressure to look a certain way. The way I dealt with the perfectionism was trying to fit in, was trying to be perfect. Every day would wake up and weigh myself, think about my schedule and where I was going to fit in 2 or 3 hours to go to the gym or an hour and a half to go running, in addition to studying. And then how much could I compensate during the day in terms of not eating to make sure that like my exercise far superseded my intake. And that was in addition to trying to figure out, how the renal system works, like how I'm going to get through anatomy. And it was suffocating. Like, it was, quite honestly, was terrible. And I felt like everyone else, I knew everyone else was feeling the same pressure, but no one was really talking about it. You look around you and you're like, everyone's doing so well except me. I'm not going to tell them that. I'm not going to admit that I have a weakness. Because a weakness is a failure in a lot of ways in medical school. So I just kept it really quiet. I had so many secrets. I don't think the story is unique in any way. I wonder how many others have had the same exact secrets and the same exact struggle, and how different my medical experience could have been if I'd just been honest and open to people. And now that I have a little distance from it and I'm, handling it better, I wish that I had found those people or been more honest so that we could have kind of gone through it together instead of just feeling like I was the only one who was, being eaten alive in a sense. I think about the times that I could have formed friendships and I didn't because I needed to go exercise, or that activity involved food and I didn't want to be around that. For a while I thought that was coping. I thought that, I was using the gym for healthy anxiety release, and I thought I was doing really well. And the tricky thing about eating disorders is the worse your disorder gets, kind of like the more perfect you seem, the better you are in terms of society's eyes. My first year of med school, I lost tons of weight, and it was like, this is a huge success. Like, she's so healthy, she's going to med school, I know I was checking those boxes from the outside, but inside it was a nightmare. Eventually, the pressure became too much. The more I saw how much I was losing by dealing with this or not dealing with this, the more I felt like I can't do this anymore. I think the hardest part of med school for me was definitely step one. You wake up for step one and take these U-World blocks and you fail them, and then you fail the next one, and you fail the next one. You take a practice test, you fail the practice test, and then I didn't have enough time to do 3-hour gym workouts. I didn't have enough time to go running every day, and that was another failure in my mind. I think that, these insecurities and doubts that you have anyway, everyone has the imposter syndrome and all that, was like, here's your tangible proof that you don't belong here, that you aren't doing well enough. I just felt like I was never going to be good enough in this world. And step one kind of really drove that point home. Like, it doesn't matter that you passed every class because now you're not passing. What we're told is that if you don't pass step 1, your career's over, which isn't true at all, but that's like the messaging. And it was like, well, what did I just do for the last 2 years if I'm not going to be a doctor? It was just like an abyss that was too scary to look at. And it felt like I was getting closer and closer to it, and I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't know who I could talk to about it, because I didn't want my classmates to know that I, wasn't smart enough to pass or was struggling more than it seemed like everyone else was struggling. And so I think trying to just hold this like growing fear inside me was just too much. I was living with some really close friends, and like my sister, for one, she immediately noticed that something was wrong in a way that, I could hide it pretty well from classmates. Can't hide it from your twin sister. And this is actually outside of medical school. Like, the people I was living with were unwilling to let me go. And I needed that, like I needed people to keep pulling me back, even though I was perfectly willing to just disappear from it all. I wouldn't say they forced me to get into therapy by any means, but definitely talked about it ad nauseum until I was like, fine, I'll just try it. One day, I had failed my U-roll block, hadn't gone running yet, got in a fight with my sister about something completely trivial, and I lost it. I thought, I can't do this anymore. I need to just implode or explode or something. We all get those like noise canceling headphones to help us study, and I put them on and just started screaming. And maybe I forgot that everyone else was around. I didn't even notice that other people could hear me, and that was kind of the beginning of being like, okay, you have to look in the mirror, and find a way to deal with this, because it's not getting you anywhere good fast. Ultimately, like, the eating disorder was one of the things that was making it much harder than it needed to be. I didn't want to give up on medical school, but I wanted to give up all the things that were making it so hard. It sucked, honestly. Like, I wouldn't say that recovery has been easy, or by any means, like, is it something I want to be doing? In a lot of ways, I still want to have the eating disorder, because I would see myself as more perfect. Healing from an eating disorder kind of feels like a failure. That sucks, to wake up and try and find victory in something that feels like you're letting yourself down it's just a tension that's not easy to kind of face every day. Started going to therapy, started being more honest with myself and, my sister and my support network here. Kind of getting out of that vacuum that med school gets you in was really helpful, because it kind of reminded me, like, this isn't the end of anything for you. This isn't also the most important thing going on in the world. Looking around at other women around me, be it family members or friends who have struggled with the same thing. In a lot of ways, I think living with an eating disorder feels like living in a cage, and you can't really get out of that cage. And I wonder a lot how many people around us are living in cages, mental cages, whatever it is. Something about medicine is very competitive, and I feel like there are so many times where classmates intentionally or unintentionally would talk about numbers and just ways to compare themselves, and that just feeds into an eating disorder mind, like, you should be better at this, better at that. I wouldn't say that I've gotten through it or that, like, I'm over it. I think of it as remission, because this happened in 7th grade, this happened in college. It's kind of comes and goes, honestly, and that's a scary feeling, to know that, like, this isn't really the end. This is just a period of time where I'm doing better. Having an eating disorder has been affecting me long before, medical school. I think it probably was the worst it's been during medical school. I think of it as like the healthy Barbie. Like, you have to be so smart, perfectly dressed, always presentable and smiling for everyone, patients, classmates, attendings that are criticizing you, just nod and bear it. I think once I realized that I would never, ever be able to accomplish what was expected of me in terms of being this perfect person, in a lot of ways it was like a rubber band that just snapped, and it was a release, and that has helped me so much. I need to be doing what's best for me, my patients, and everyone else will have to deal with that. Someone during the mental health panel that the wellness committee puts on was talking about their struggle with an eating disorder. And I was looking at this person and was like, I can't believe how brave they're being. Like, that's incredible. They're staring at this, room of 60 people that they don't know and telling their truth. And here I am pretending that I'm like the model citizen of mental health. And I just felt really inspired by that. I don't want to keep this a secret anymore. I don't want to keep lying to everyone around me. I think the more honest I am, the stronger the remission feels, like the more it feels like I won't go back to that secret. If I'd heard her say that, my first day of medical school, I just wonder what it would have been like. I wonder how sooner I would have asked for help or been willing to say, like, is anyone else feeling this way? Their honesty really changed things for me. Like, I wanted to be more like that. Instead of cutting off tons of relationships the first 2 years of med school to try and feed this disorder. I don't want to keep this a secret anymore. I don't want to keep lying to everyone around me. And it's taken me a while to get here. Like, I didn't just the next day be like, hello everyone. Guess what? It's been a hard process, and I still don't even like saying the words out loud, but I'm hoping that the more I say it, the more other people will feel comfortable saying it or thinking it, or even just acknowledging it to themselves. If you can just hold on to the part of you that's like, I got here because I deserve to be here, and because I'm good enough as I am, that I don't necessarily, sure, I can take this feedback and think about it and mull it over and accept it, but that doesn't mean I have to change who I am fundamentally. It doesn't mean that I have to give up who I am to fit into this model citizen. I wish I had, from day one, started therapy so I could just talk about the medical experience. I mean, just having someone who wasn't a classmate to say, like, wow, what you're going through is really crazy and sounds kind of unhealthy, was so gratifying, because it was like, oh, so it's not just in my head. Having a resource outside of medicine who could be your touchstone with reality would have been really helpful for me. I think it has to be like your goal day one, like, who's my person going to be outside of medicine that I can talk to about this stuff, so that you don't let it fall to the wayside in all the other pressures that there are. I think for me, finding a therapist who kind of specialized in eating disorders was really helpful, especially in the beginning, when that was kind of like the crux of what I was struggling with. Then being open to going wherever the journey kind of takes you. I think that's one of the surprising things about therapy, is you might go in seeing yourself one way and come out being like, oh, I didn't even know that that's what I was really struggling with. I have two really close friends in med school who we all kind of like started therapy at the same time, and I think for me it was really nice to know I wasn't the only one who wasn't perfect. Use each other as a resource, and that takes honesty and vulnerability, and that's obviously hard when you barely know these people and they all seem perfect. It took a while to admit that to them, but as soon as we did, it was like, wow, what a relief. Like, we're all kind of our own people, and that's okay, and we're just gonna deal with that. I just feel like we really underestimate the value of our classmates and our peers, and we all got here because some part of us has a good sense of caring for each other, and so I think that's something we should hold on to throughout medical school and try not to let the other stuff eat away at that. My mind matters a lot more than my appearance or my body. I think it feels like the way you look is really important, and certainly some people will make you feel that way. They'll make you feel like, oh, you don't look like a doctor, you don't do the things doctors should do. Practicing medicine is not about what you look like. It's about how you can think through problems, how you can connect to your patients, what your intentions are. And I think remembering that, like, you're here to develop your mind and your persona and your soul. I just wish I had known that, and I wish I'd taken myself more seriously as a student and not as this image of a physician, what a physician should be. I think that might have changed the way I kind of approached learning and relationships and all the rest of it.